Hey, Katie.
Hi,
How are you today? Nice to see you.
good to see you. I'm doing well.
Awesome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about you and your practice?
Absolutely. So my name's Katie Byron. I use they, them pronouns. I provide full spectrum reproductive support. So supporting folks through pregnancy, birth, postpartum, also abortion, miscarriage, other pregnancy losses. Um, and I am also a childbirth educator and a social worker.
Awesome. It's a lot. I love it. What are you querying right now?
Um, I am querying. Uh, One of the things that I'm querying right now is, I think, perinatal mental health. It's certainly a space in which there is there are certainly a lot of folks who are straight and cis who like have a lot of experience working with queer and trans people and families, um, and um, and there are not as many folks who are queer, trans, non-binary themselves in this work, and it is certainly a place where um, I think there is deep need both for more education and for folks who are actually from queer and trans communities um, to be doing the work and to be in positions to be providing support to specifically queer and trans families.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. That's awesome. And such a good point too about, with all perinatal work, right? Like there's plenty of straight and cis people who say they have experience working with queer families, and that's great if people feel like they're a good fit. And also there's so much more to it than that. So thanks for bringing that to the table.
Yeah.
What inspired you to do the work that you do?
So I um I think there are a few spaces. Uh the most one of which being sort of like my personal experience, particularly as like a fat femme person and living in a world where a lot of people have a lot of opinions about my body and what my body does in space and the size of my body and the shape of it, um, has me feeling, I think, particularly attuned to the way that bodies get the amount that our society puts on bodies during reproductive changes. And so there's something that is both like personally very liberating and healing for me in doing this work of helping and accompanying people as they are like finding new ways to claim their bodies as their bodies change. Um, on a sort of more practical note, I like got to college as a like young white feminist and was like, oh yeah, like the way to like express my politics is to become a clinic escort at Planned Parenthood. And so that was work that I did for a couple of years in college. Um, and um, and I think and was a space where um, I saw how how those like micro interactions mattered to people.
Mm,
That having someone who is going to smile as they walked you from your car, or who is going to like ask about where you got your shoes to drown out the sounds of protesters, like meant something.
yeah.
And I certainly think that's work where I built a lot of my skills around like establishing rapport with people, and shaped how I like approach people, understanding that like I might be approaching people like who are about to like step into who knows what kind of like shaming judgmental landscape. Um,
Mhm.
but it was in doing that work that I started learning about like other forms of abortion support work. Eventually found out that there like were people who did support work around abortion. And um, after I finished college, I moved down to DC. I did a training with the DC Doulas for Choice Collective, and started working in clinics providing support to folks around abortion experiences. And that for me was like really a transformative space of realizing like this is in fact like not about my politics. Um,
Yeah.
was a wild presumptive mindset. Um, and that really the thing that was so moving to me about the work was not because it was some expression of my politics in any kind of way, but was about the experience of being with people and of sitting with the like just messiness of what an abortion meant to someone, or what any kind of reproductive experience might mean for someone. And whether it's the thing that means that you get to like go on your vacation and have margaritas without any sense of guilt, or if it's like a really complicated thing that like is tied into feelings about a relationship or whatever else. um, and um, and so often when I think about what inspired me to get into a lot of the work that I do, I think back to some of those initial clinic experiences and the people who I had the honor of getting to sit with and to be with, and got to really kind of fall in love with that way of being with people.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So drawn in via maybe like college politics and then stuck around for the actual human element of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of people are going to go through that kind of similar transformation. And so it's where a lot of people have their starting point. So thanks for sharing.
definitely.
That's awesome. What's your support philosophy?
Yeah. I fundamentally will tell people that, I think that um, I approach this an with an understanding that reproductive support work is fundamentally about justice work. That my support philosophy comes from a place of acknowledging that like we live in a society that has privatized all kinds of care in ways that are um, like not aligned with how humans have at any point in history done care for each other. Um, my support philosophy is like rooted in the fact that like I don't really think that any of the hats I wear should exist as professions. um, and nonetheless, we like live in a society that has told us that like your community's not going to show up for you in hard times or when you're going through big life transitions. And so the way to get support is to bring in some private individual who has specialized training. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so my support philosophy, acknowledging the fact that like it's messed up that we have to have this at all, comes from a place of really trying to empower people to see, to make real choices about what they want their experience to be like, what tools they already have to deal with hard or big things, um, and about like what kind of story do you want to be able to tell about this experience. That this is not, it at times might feel like something that is happening to you, and that's super real. And what kind of sense can we make out of that? What are the ways that this can be integrated into the story of your life? How do you want to understand this experience? And so that's a lot of, I think, how I approach my support work.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah. To acknowledge sort of the history of any kind of support work being not like a professional role that you need training to do. But yeah, it's because of the system that we have these roles, because the system doesn't have these roles in it. So amazing. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Okay. So we've talked about your natal work. What's in your natal chart? Tell me your sun, moon, rising.
I am a Capricorn sun, Virgo moon, Libra rising.
Nice. All right. All right. Libras.
Libra party. I
Love
feel
it.
I feel like there's a lot of Libra energy in birth work.
That's awesome. I've never had anyone say that to me, but I have clients ask me my chart sometimes, and I'm like, Libras get along with everyone, so it's cool.
I feel like I've definitely seen threads of like birth workers talking about their charts, and I feel like I've seen a lot of Libra energy.
Right on, Libras, hit us up. Amazing. So what's your favorite thing about being a queer support person or working with LGBTQ families?
Yeah. One of my favorite things about queering support work is about the ways that we're able to acknowledge relationships. I think that particularly in like medical systems, and I've worked in hospitals as a social worker as part of my social work training. I wear another hat in like a spiritual care realm. I've served as a chaplain in hospitals, and something I consistently see is the way that like there are real hierarchies of relationships in medical settings, in part because there are like next of kin hierarchies about like who can make medical decisions for you in an emergency, right? And so like, like married legal spouses win all the time. um, and I think something that's really special about queer folks doing support work is that like we know that that's not always, and possibly not most of the time, true.
Sure.
And to be able to acknowledge like who are the most important people in your life around this experience, and like maybe the answer is a monogamous partner, and like maybe the answer is an aunt who had a similar reproductive experience, or a close friend who has been with you for all of the hard times, or it is a space where actually like the person who's best equipped to support you is like your metamor who you don't get along with or talk about all that much with, but like this is something that you have like a shared experience around, and like they're going to be your like really going to be your person, or they're like really organized in a way that's going to be helpful. And I think that being able to not have walking in without assumptions about who's going to be most important to you or what relationships are going to be the thing that's going to hold you in this is, I think, something that is one of my favorite things, to just see all of the ways that people build community and family.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it is really in these times that those kinds of relationships get kind of like tested and called on. And it's like, whose name do you write on your paperwork and all your medical stuff? So yeah, it's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
If you could improve one thing about the experience for queer and trans birthing families, what would it be?
I would, so many things. But if I could change one thing, it would be for providers of all kinds to actually like take seriously the words that people use to talk about what's happening to them and their bodies, which I think about both in terms of particularly queer and trans families, and like the family names that people want used, and that it's not in every other part of clinical training, like people are taught to like use the words that your patient or your client uses. And yet somehow when it comes to queer and trans families, somehow all of that knowledge just like falls out of people's heads. Or about reproductive experiences in general, I've certainly seen, I've heard plenty of really horrific stories of medical providers who like suddenly don't have any like helpful words to say around abortion or around pregnancy loss. And I think certainly also the experiences of all kinds of marginalized people who are telling people about things that they're experiencing in their bodies and are being dismissed or written off or not taken seriously. And I think that if I could change one thing, it would be for providers to actually like hear the words that people use, take them seriously, and then reflect those words back at people.
Amazing. I think that would make lots of subsequent changes. So good answer. Amazing. Do you have any advice for new or aspiring queer and trans birth workers?
Yeah, I think if there's one piece of advice I would give, I think it's that you get to this can be a choose your own adventure style path. I think there are I think there's a lot of setup in birth world that is like, you have to do your training and then you follow the like step-by-step guide to get certified in whatever it is that you trained in. And then you like somehow find clients and you probably undersell yourself for the sake of like climbing up this. But I just think that so many people get stuck and so many people don't stay in birth work, like people who we need in our communities and who the families in our communities need as birth workers and as support people,
Mhm.
because they get lost in the bureaucracy or in the like what they think is the step-by-step thing. And I think like the reality is like there are very few rules, and um and like if the organization you train with has a certification process that is trash, like you don't have to do it.
Yes.
Right? Like if you have to read, if the reading list for your training organization is a bunch of like hetero cis centered nonsense, like you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and like, you know, if you feel like some step in the process has made it so that like you're being asked to do something that's not aligned with your values or not how you want to practice, or makes you feel like you need some sort of extra specialized training to know how to do the stuff that you intuitively have been doing your entire life, uh, you don't have to do it.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah. As someone who, you know, has been an uncertified birth attendant for 10 years, I'm all about it. There's very little benefit to that depending on the states you live in and the legislation and all that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it is. I like the choose your own adventure advice. That's a good.
And I think there's so much that is like, you know, I think there are a lot of particularly white, cis, straight birth workers who have like really commodified specific types of training that like you don't actually have to pay hundreds of dollars to learn how to do that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I see this a lot in the mental health field, right? That there are all kinds of very expensive trainings you can do about like how to support LGBTQ clients that are taught by straight people who have all this experience, in part to train queer and trans people who don't have the right certifications to do the thing that they do for their like community and all of their clients all the time, right?
Yeah. And it's like, who is the money going to, right? Like, where are these
Yeah.
resources being given? Yeah. Awesome. So what's something not natal about your life that you want to share with people?
um, Something not natal about my life is that um, I am, yeah, sure. I am trying to think through like things that I do. Um, so I think a not natal thing about my life is, as I mentioned earlier, I also like wear some spiritual care hats. I'm also getting a master's in divinity, which is in part related to natal stuff. It's like certainly like in this realm of like holistic spiritual and emotional care for folks. But also means that I'm like a little bit of a theology nerd. Um,
Right
and
on.
so also always down to talk theologies of liberation.
Right on. Liberation theology, folks, hit us up. Amazing, Katie. So where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah. So you can find me at lgbtqbirth.com. My personal birth support website is birthwithkatie.com. You can also find me on Instagram at birthwithkatie.
Amazing. Thank you.